Hey, this is Zach. Welcome back to Living LA. Thanks so much for coming by. Today I'm here with Britt, and we're talking about closing lessons once again. So this is that special series, Closing Lessons, that you can find for this channel. We're going to be talking to you about a home that we recently closed on Federal Avenue for the 90025 zip code on the buyer side. So right after this, we'll get straight to it. Thanks. Hey, welcome back. We're going to jump straight into the conversation about the closing lessons that we've learned from closing a buyer for a home on Federal Avenue. So, Britt, recently we closed a home for Hossein and their family, specifically Hossein's parents, who are a little bit elder.
Yeah.
They're living now at Federal Avenue over at the 90025 zip code. What are some of the big kind of processes and things that were on your mind throughout this transaction that you're kind of reflecting on as we walk away from it?
Yeah. I feel like this one was actually a very smooth and easy escrow. They definitely knew what they wanted in terms of their specs, having seen quite a handful of homes prior to. It definitely fit all their needs: 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, a newer HOA. So I think that was kind of one of the bigger things, now that I think about it, is the difference between the year build of an HOA complex or community. And along the way, we've really coached them to understand the overall budget of when you're buying a home. What does that include when you're buying a condo? And whether that's a first-time home buyer, we have a lot of clients that are eyeing condos. So what does that mean, and how do we best prep them for that process, and knowing what their monthly is, making sure that they're very comfortable in knowing the HOA reserves, the HOA monthly dues, and what's included. I think through this specific escrow, I think that was the most kind of impactful item that they had learned along the way, and it really helped them with their purchase on Federal be very comfortable and confident in the escrow process.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more, because I think that buyers might find it interesting that an HOA for a condo complex or an HOA for a townhome complex might be very different than a single family residence HOA. Right? The amenities that are offered or not offered, and also the idea of reserves and special assessments. And because with a condo, you don't have full ownership of the real estate, you have partial ownership of the real estate, so the impact that has. So let's dive into HOAs and kind of the impacts that they can have in those specific subsets.
Yeah, absolutely. And with HOAs, I think it's really important to, when you're looking at a home, every complex and every home and unit will have a different set of HOA regulations, CC&Rs. At times, the sellers or escrow will have that ahead of time. And most of the time, I would say 50% of the time, you receive that in escrow. But there's a list of different questions that we can leave below of what our team uses to really help our clients along the way.
Yeah.
And I think it was really helpful to kind of know off the bat, how many units are there in the condo? Is there an elevator? Are there, how do packages arrive? That was a lot of common questions that our clients had, which really helped them find the home that they needed.
Yeah.
Also with parking, sometimes it's tandem parking, sometimes it's side by side, and sometimes the washer and dryer is included, and sometimes it's not.
Right.
And that's why our team was there to help every step of the way to really fine tune and look and show properties that really fit their criteria.
Yeah. So for buyers who are considering buying in an HOA complex, right, whether that be, let's just stick with condos since that's what we sold this time or helped to sell this time, right? For buyers who are considering buying in a condo complex with an HOA, what are some things that we would suggest to them to just keep an eye on, or at least consider keep an eye on and be alert for?
Sure. Yeah. I think with HOAs, it's important to understand that the difference between buying a single family home versus a condo with a HOA included is that annual or monthly home improvement line item, whether it's 1 to 5%, that would be on the general average of what a homeowner would consider or have as savings throughout the year or maybe the quarter to make home improvements. In an HOA condo, that will include, you should include the special assessments if there are any noted, or any exterior work that the HOA might work on or have plans to work on. And that will all be disclosed within the escrow process and the HOA docs that are provided to the buyer.
So for those who may not know, can we also briefly define what are special assessments and what are HOA reserves?
Yeah, absolutely. So with HOA reserves, so that is for an emergency type basis where, say, for example, the roof needs to be fixed, or possibly the concrete on the foundation in the garage needs to be fixed, or there's a pipe in the in the basement that needs to be fixed that wasn't really accounted for. That's what HOA reserves are there to do. If by chance there's a time where the HOA board or the management company finds it's a need to add on that expense, they will do a special assessment. And that's usually not, they'll have a timeline. So it's usually could be for 2 years time or 3 years time or maybe 5, but it will be a specific time allocated for that special assessment. And it'll be very much written out in the documents that you receive as a buyer of what the special assessment is and how much is paid to the HOA for that item.
Cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the client that we were serving. So how did we meet this client, and then how long or how many showings and different escrows did we enter into until we got them into the one that was like right for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we met Hossein and his family. They're absolutely darling, at our listing in Centinela Avenue. And with that one, they were definitely in love with Centinela. What they were wanting was that elevator to go from parking, bottom floor, all the way up to the unit. And that was the one thing that they had decided. You know, each buying party will be different and what their 5 must-haves are. And they realized after previewing Centinela that they really needed, and that was a must-have to have the elevator. And since then, that was in, I think, February, March, that we had met them. And then we went on probably like 10 showings around
like
there. And was able to submit a few offers. And we went into escrow with one, with Barrington, and they absolutely loved that one as well. But they found out, and this is a big thing that we can dive into, is when you're purchasing a home, it's really important to kind of look at if there's any open, and this is open permits through the city. Now, obviously, the seller should close them with their contractor, but for some reason for this one, it just was not done. So there was maybe 4 to 5 plus open permits, and unfortunately, that was like what held us up. They loved everything about the unit. It was, you know, exactly what they wanted, but it had open permits, and at that time, you know, there's nothing. For example, they wanted to install a new HVAC system and a washer and dryer because those weren't included, but they were okay to make that happen. But without closing the current permits, they couldn't open new.
Right. So yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more, because this was actually probably my biggest learning experience in this whole process with Hossein and his family, was the piece about permits. So why is it a problem for somebody to buy a home where there's open permits on the home?
Yeah, that's a great question. With open permits, it's really difficult unless the contractor that has opened the permits are able to close them and do the walkthrough with the city to then finalize and close the permits. The next contractor of the buyer can't open new ones.
Especially on the same property. And even in the same property on the same work, right? So for example, for Barrington, the wall behind the sink had to be opened up to install the washer and dryer. But the previous work done had opened up that wall, done the work, and not closed out the permits for that.
Yeah.
So not only could permits not be opened necessarily on the same property,
Mm-hmm.
that could maybe be avoided perhaps if it was different work in a different area of the home.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, but then the big issue is that you can't do work on the same area where there's already open permits.
Correct.
So if those permits can't be closed because you can't reach the contractor, or they simply won't, or the seller isn't willing to, or whatever the reason, then whoever buys the property per the city can't start their own work on the property.
Correct. And you
Yeah.
could have your contractor, it's very rare where your own contractor will take up another contractor's work to close the permit. It's very rare that that'll happen. In some cases it would, but yeah, it's very rare for that to happen.
Okay, great. So I guess last kind of couple of things are, let's talk about the actual escrow process for federal. So once we got them into a home that they were really, really excited about, got them under contract for federal, what was the entire escrow process like? What are some things for buyers who are watching this? What are some things that we can kind of let them know just to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I'm working with our team once we're submitting offers, and you know that it's a property that's like a 7, 8, 9, 10, like it's up there, and we're submitting a strong offer on our behalf. We will always be sure that our vendors, our home inspectors, plumbers, electricians, are all ready and available in the next few days. So if they give an offer timeline, and we know just to be sure that if by chance we have a 7 to 10 day window of our inspection contingency, and we can kind of work you through what that means and all the different steps. But if we have a very short window, we want to be sure that if our offer and when our offer gets accepted, that we have our home inspection on day, I would say 2 or 3, or as soon as possible. I think that really helps to get all the information that we need right up front about the property and be able to do any additional inspections thereafter.
Yeah, awesome. One thing that I noticed during the escrow process is that Hossein had actually wanted to change the down amount pretty late in the process, right? So for somebody who wants to maybe change their down amount that late in the process, what are some things that a buyer can do to look at numbers early on in the process? That way they don't need to feel that they want to change, increase or decrease the amount down, which will then impact the loan package, which could then impact the closing timeline.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. So let's talk about that. Like, what are some things that a buyer can do on the front end of the process to make sure that when the loan gets put together as we're about to close, they don't look at that and go, actually, I don't like that monthly payment. I want to increase or decrease my down.
Yeah, that's a great question. And having check-ins with your lender very upfront, even before you place the offer, to kind of know, hey, if I place my offer with this down amount, this is going to be the monthly versus this down amount. They'll give you the options. So right off the bat, before you even place the offer, and of course, under certain circumstances, you can change it. I would say if you are, let the lender know within your 7 to 10 day inspection period. During that timeline would be great. And a lot of the times you may or may not have a appraisal contingency as well. And we want to make sure that we're as proactive as possible and keeping updated with the lender and letting them know what your preferences are, so that we can have your package ready and available for signing and closing on time and have it a very smooth process.
Yeah, totally. Okay, great. And how long do you think that we spent with Hossein and his family throughout this whole process?
Start to finish, I would say less than a couple months.
So in those couple of months, what do you think is 1 or 2 lessons that somebody watching this could really pull away from the whole process of this work? What's a closing lesson that somebody could just walk away with for this one?
Oh, I think, so when you do your final walkthrough, this is one thing that, I've done a lot of walkthroughs, but for a condo, if by chance, and this one was a gem, you have your storage room, you have your parking space of where you're also able to park your car. do the walkthrough so you can kind of see of those spaces along with the unit. So if by chance there's anything left over by the seller, we can notify them. We can let the listing agent know, hey, there's a few items left over. Did they want these items or not? I think that was one item that I would have put on the checklist. And not that we didn't see them during our preview, but right as you're closing, we'll have the final walkthrough, and we'll do a VP, which is a verification of property. That is after the home is destaged, after the seller has removed all their items.
Yep.
But if by chance it is a condo or a townhouse, just check those areas just to be sure all those areas are clear of debris or items.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great pointer. Cool. Thanks so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed our closing lessons episode today. Come back next time for more information about lessons you can take away as a home buyer or a home seller. We'll see you next time. And if you have any questions, our information is on the screen below. Thanks so much.
Have a
Bye.
good one. Bye.